Liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, liebe Freunde, ich freue mich sehr, Sie ganz herzlich
Let me welcome you all cordially on behalf of the Foundation devoted to trade unions in Europe. We have organized this conference as a joint effort. It is a joint effort, and let me welcome you along with my colleague Basil Kerski, the President of the European Solidarity Center. Both the two of our organizations have organized this conference as a joint effort. We have created the agenda for this conference along with Solidarity, Trade Union, and OPZZ, IG Metall, and other trade unions. Let me welcome all of our colleagues from other trade unions, federations and confederations of trade unions. Let me welcome cordially also the presidents of Polish trade unions organizations, Mr. Fałka, Mr. Duda, and Mr. Guza. Also, let me extend a warm welcome to the member of the board, managing member of the board, Hans-Jürgen Urban. This is his first visit to Warsaw. A warm welcome to me. Gabriele Bischoff from the German Trade Union Center. And also, I hope that we will be able to jointly start a debate on the future of trade unions in Poland and in Germany and in Europe, the future that we want to create together for the sake of our employees, for the sake of all employees in Europe, so that we can be more effective and so that we can represent these employees better. We would like to implement the vision of a social Europe. Now, employees have to face important challenges. Precarious agreements, unemployment are just examples of problems. High unemployment rate among the young people. Also, trade unions have to face these issues. Of course, there are further problems, and we will be discussing these problems. We are all under pressure. Trade unions are organized at national levels, but they also are trying to organize themselves at the European level. We are trying to enable trade unions to act on the European level, and they are important for the society, but now they are under pressure. And in our panel debates, we will try to discuss the cooperation among trade unions in Europe, and also how we would like this cooperation, what we would like this cooperation to look like in the future. Let's take a look at the capital. It is organized at the international level. It's globalized, and and this is the way we also should be acting. What should our response be to this as trade unions? Maybe our cooperation should be at the international level as well. We are also wondering about the capacity of trade unions right now. Who are the partners? Who are the allies of trade unions right now? Who are those who support us? How can we prepare trade unions for talks with the government, for negotiations with the government? And how can trade unions operate within the society? How can they exert influence on the general public, on economic issues? How can they influence the economic situation and social situation in European countries? All these questions are interesting for us, and we will take a closer look at them. And these questions are the reason why we organized this conference. Also, We've been wondering where to organize the conference, and we thought that Warsaw was a good place to organize the conference. There is a rich tradition of trade union movement in Poland. Trade unions have achieved a lot in Poland, in politics as well, but at the same time they are under pressure. There are very many challenges, both social and other challenges. And the question is, how can we jointly represent the employees in order to improve their situation? This is interesting for all of us across Europe. So thank you very much for attending this conference, for being ready to get involved. Without your involvement, these things will not be successful. And it's good that we have organized, that we are debating this issue this year. We have good contacts with the representatives of the academia who are also present here. They will be taking part in the debates and the panel discussions. We are happy that we will launch the discussion that will lead us towards the future. I would also like to refer to Willy Brandt. It's best to create the future and not predict it. We would like to create the future, and we would like to discuss what kind of future we would like to create. So have fruitful discussions today, and I would like to say thank you to everybody who organized this event, but in particular Basil Kerski from European Solidarity Center, who will take the floor right now.
Szanowni Państwo, w imieniu Europejskiego Centrum Solidarności bardzo serdecznie Państwa witam. Niestety nie w Gdańsku.
Let me welcome all of you. Unfortunately, it's not in Gdańsk, it's in Warsaw. This conference, this project is very special for all of us. The European Solidarity Center is a special institution, and I'm not saying this because I would like to disseminate some propaganda here, but I would like to tell you that we are a young institution which has been operating for 7 years now. We were launched by the Solidarity Trade Union and the Minister of Culture and the Gdańsk municipality. Our role is to talk about the history, the dynamism which has transformed Europe after the Second World War, but we are not trying to close this experience in the walls of a museum or in history. No, we want to build this myth by discussing openly, discussing difficult issues openly, issues concerning contemporary problems. We are posing difficult questions concerning our heritage, what has been left of it, in what kind of reality do we have to function these days. So on the one hand, what we have created is a museum. Next year on the 31st of August, we will launch an exhibition on the revolution of solidarity, and this exhibition will be opened by us telling about the story of strikes in Poland, the Gdańsk agreements in the 70s and 80s. We remember about other regions of Poland as well. It's not just Gdańsk. And we will finish the story with the year 1989. We will remind you of how this peaceful transformation took place in Europe in 1987, not just Poland, but also ex-Soviet countries. We will also show the democratic transformations in the countries of Central and Eastern Europe. Our institution is a Polish institution, but also an institution whose statute refers not just to the Polish experience, but to the entire European experience from Vladivostok to Gdańsk to Sofia and to Berlin. An interesting example of European type of thinking. As I have said, we are an institution which is trying to organize a dialogue about Europe, about the role of democracy in our societies, in our civic societies. The topic of trade unions is important for me. because often what I face in Poland are debates which are quite negative towards trade union. I think without a social concord, social agreement or compromise, without a compromise between the government, the trade unions and the society, there is no social development. And also the level of social development, to a large extent, defines our competitiveness. It's not only how much we earn, the wages. It's not only the investment conditions, which are very often underlined. This is the condition of the shape of the society, which draws, which attracts investors, which creates possibilities for development. But we are meeting here also for two other important reasons. When talking about the transformations in Poland and in Europe, we would like to draw your attention to the fact that in 1989, what we did not know at the time, we did not only open a new stage of political, a new political phase in Europe, but it's also it also opened a phase of transformation. This was also the date when the World Wide Web started. In 1989, January 1989, a few months before the round table talks here in Poland, Poland's domain, internet domain, has been active since January 1990. So formally, this is also the date when the Republic of Poland started, after the communism era. So this is something that has been underlined by philosophers and scientists. You definitely know Jürgen Habermas, who said that this revolution really enables the countries to catch up with the level of development that the Western countries have been enjoying since 1945. So this is this was an adoption of the model which was in place in the west of Europe in 1945. So actually the communication revolution has changed our public domain, the way we work. And this was a challenge because it demanded new things from employers, from political elites, and new relationships had to be forged between the society and the employer and the politicians as well. A very deep transformation, and we can only appreciate the depth of it today. The second challenge that we are facing is Europe. Paradoxically enough, I can say that trade unions have always been busy with securing the interests of employees and transcending the borders of regions or countries. There was always this aspect of solidarity, and this dynamism has been creating Europe. And in this joint space, we have been discovering our regional identity, our local identity, and often we have to choose between whether we think about Europe or whether we want to underline our competitive edge. And I think this is the challenge that most of trade unionists are facing. Do we want to represent the interests of our employees, of our company, of our region, or do we think long-term? Do we organize an abstract form of solidarity which transcends the borders? So I think we are meeting here in the right moment. This is a very important moment for my institution. I think next year I can invite you to our seat in Gdańsk shipyard, Plac Solidarności 1. This is the address, so feel invited. And I'm very happy that we have been able to meet here in a broad group of representatives of trade unions and employers as well. And also, let me extend a warm welcome to Piotr Duda. I can firmly say, Piotr, you are my employer, actually, because the deputy president of Solidarność is also the president of the board of the council, which controls our institution. So I'm very happy that you have been able to make it to our conference and feel invited to join us and open the conference. But finally, I would like to thank Knut and Sebastian Zentart, who was a main organizer of this conference, and also Jakub Kufel from European Solidarity Center, and also thank you to Mr. Adamczyk, who helped us organize the concept on the part of the Solidarity trade union. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. At the beginning, I'd also like to thank everyone. Thank you for the idea of organizing this conference. Last year we were talking about it in Gdańsk. And of course I said I would like to have this conference organized because in these difficult times that our country and Europe face now, any debate on the situation of trade union is very necessary and welcome. And Mr. Kerski said that I'm his employer, so you have to know that Mr. Kerski is not a precarious worker, that's for sure. I'm deeply convinced about it because I'm the employer of Mr. Basil Kerski. Ladies and gentlemen, trade unions in Europe, the situation at present and the outlook. This is a very important topic and a very difficult topic. We could talk about it for hours, not only until 5 p.m., but for a few days, because this topic is really crucial. Trade union movement in Europe has to be linked to Europe and to the European Confederation of Trade Unions. And we have the representative, Mr. Niemiec, of this confederation with us today. And we are really glad that a Pole performs such an important function within this organization. The European Confederation of Trade Unions cannot be strong if the national structures are not strong as well when it comes to trade unions. This is for us a great challenge. And the first lecture that we are going to have today concerning solidarity without borders, and also Mr. Kerski talked about it a moment ago. This is crucial for us because very often we meet during meetings of, for example, steering committees, and our opinions differ when it comes to the functioning of social affairs in our countries, respective countries. But the most important fact is as follows: we have to work out a compromise, a consensus. This is the most important thing. Maybe we are not in conflict, but there are different problems, for example, when it comes to the Climate Pact, and trade unions for different countries have different opinions on that. As for Poland, we are trying to convince others that this directive is going in a wrong direction and is not a good idea. The opinions of trade unions in Europe differ because the structure of employment is changing in respective countries. For example, self-employment, teleworking, just to name a few. Sometimes employees have to start their own businesses not because they want to, but because they are forced to do so by employers. And as a result, trade unions are losing their members, and we have to look for new solutions to organize our members in trade unions. We, the trade union Solidarność, we complained about the fact that in Poland, employees are discriminated when they are self-employed, because in our legislation, there are no regulations concerning the unionizations of self-employees. Mr. Jęcina is with us today. I'm very glad that you are here with us. It's not maybe a tripartite commission, but it's a bilateral commission maybe today, because we'd like to have these regulations introduced to our legislation. There are many self-employees in Poland, around 3 million in Poland, so we want them to have this opportunity to organize themselves in trade unions, and trade unions are necessary in our country, and everyone is aware of it. We are also aware of the fact that more and more employees are poor. This is a huge issue, a huge challenge ahead of us. And it's not only a problem of separate governments, but it's also a problem of trade unions. Because as we can see on the example of Poland, irrespective of the fact whether we are developing or not, whether GDP is rising or not, employees, the situation of employees is becoming worse and worse. So the GDP does not translate into the fact that the employees in Poland have better living conditions, that they earn more. Exclusion, social exclusion is becoming more and more visible. There are more and more rich and poor people, and there's nothing in the middle. And I'd also like to say that this conference coincides with a great crisis of trust and of dialogue, of social dialogue in this country. And we, trade unions, we try to act jointly for the first time since 1989. This is the first time since 1989 that we are working jointly, and we have this joke that it is the only achievement of Mr. Donald Tusk, that we are working jointly, we as 3 different trade unions in Poland, which haven't been working together jointly since 1989. Of course, Prime Minister, you would say now that we have this tripartite commission to talk about such issues, but we no longer believe in this tripartite commission. This form of dialogue is over, and we want new forms of dialogue, a new form of cooperation. If the Prime Minister of Poland were speaking now, he would for sure say that trade unions represent the interests of members of trade unions, and maybe only the interest of activists of trade unions, of trade unionists. And I, as the Prime Minister of Poland, have to care about all the employees in Poland. That's what he would say. But maybe it's very sad, but that's true. That's what he would say, unfortunately. But this is not this isn't only a problem of Poland. This is also a situation in other countries. Other countries also have the experience, very difficult experience, of conducting talks with the representatives of government. For example, the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Slovakia. We attended a meeting of these countries last week, and they also told us that the governments are not very cooperative. That's why this meeting devoted to trade unions and the outlooks for trade unions in Europe is, for me, as the leader of the Solidarność movement, is extremely crucial. Our experience as a trade union shows that the problems concerning the decreasing number of members in trade unions is very, very difficult and is very up-to-date. So we have to convince people that they have to organize themselves in trade union because it's the only chance for them to have their voice heard. We want to be partners to the other party, to employers, to the government. We want to talk about the situation of the Polish employees. We want our opinions to be heard. I wish you all a very fruitful conference. I hope that we will all draw conclusions for the future, because the times ahead of us are really difficult. We have global competitiveness around us, and it's really a great challenge. And the way we want to go is the way that would be profitable to both employers and employees. And I hope that such days as the day today, because today we've got the day of the fight against being poor. I hope that such days will be important in the future and will translate into improving the situation of poor people in each and every country. Thank you very much.